2 points, Madam President. Number one, imagine that if you're a typical Louisiana middle-class family, mom's making, let's say, $40,000 a year. Dad's making $40,000 a year. You've got 2 children. You've got a house note. You've got a car note, probably 2 car notes, because both mom and dad have to get to work. You've got to pay for health insurance. You've got to eat. You try to save a little bit for retirement, and you try to save for your children's college education. But basically, you're living on $80,000 a year for a family of 4. And all of a sudden, prices start rising, as they have. Since President Biden has been president, we've experienced 17% inflation. That's how much prices have gone up on average. What does that mean? We cite that number a lot. And by the way, I know inflation is coming down, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad. I hope it stays down. But all that means is that prices are rising less quickly. It doesn't mean prices are dropping. These high prices caused by the president's inflation are going to be permanent. They are. I wish I didn't have to report that. And as a result of Bidenomics and inflation, in my state, the average family making $80,000 a year is going to have to pay an extra $800 a month because of inflation. That's an extra $10,000 a year. So you're on a fixed income of $80,000, and you've got to find an extra $10,000. That's happening right now to millions of Louisianians and millions of Americans. What are you going to do? Well, the first thing you're going to do is ask for a pay raise from your employer. And some of our employers have granted pay raises, and I thank them for that. But it's not how much of a pay raise you've been given that's relevant. What's relevant is how much of a pay raise you've been given vis-a-vis the inflation rate. So that's why when we look at wages, we talk about real wages. That's the amount that wages have gone up after accounting for inflation. Well, here's what they look like. Since President Biden has been president, this chart represents wages after inflation. We started up here. We're down here. They've been a little bit better lately. So most Americans who have gotten a pay raise after inflation, it doesn't count. It just doesn't count. So pay raise doesn't work. It's great to have, but inflation eats it up and then some. Well, okay, that family still got to find $10,000. What do? Well, you're going to borrow the money, and that's what's happening. Credit card debt, buy now, pay later, other types of loans. Don't just take my word for it. On the last numbers we have in the third quarter of this year, credit card spending was up 9% at Chase Bank. It was up 15% at Wells Fargo. It's not just putting more money on the card that's relevant, it's also paying down the amount on the card. So people are not only borrowing more on that credit card, but they're not able to pay the amount on their credit card off as quickly as they were. Unpaid loan balances have gone through the roof. 16% at Chase Bank, up 14% at Wells Fargo, up 11% at Citigroup. People are using credit cards. They're charging more and more. And they're paying less and less on those credit cards. and they're getting deeper, deeper into the hole. What else are people doing in my state and every other state? They're raiding their savings. If you look at the numbers, personal deposits are down 3% year over year at Chase Bank. What does that mean? It means people are raiding their savings accounts to deal with this inflation. Personal deposits are down 5% at Citigroup. Personal deposits are down 10% at Wells Fargo, and 31% in the wealth management division of Wells Fargo. My point, Madam President, is that these actions that are taken in Washington, D.C. have real-life consequences for average, everyday American families on fixed incomes. And as a result of this inflation, which is coming down, but the high prices are permanent, people are having to borrow, and people are having to raid their savings, and it is clearly a cancer on the American dream. Point two, Madam President. A month or so ago, the Congress passed a resolution. It passed here in the Senate, for us, overwhelmingly, 53 to 43. And we passed that resolution under the Congressional Review Act. What did we do? Well, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, we call it the CFPB. It's where common sense is illegal. Common sense, I know, is illegal at the CFPB. CFPB comes up with these nuggets every week. If you ever want to understand why the American people hate the federal government, just look at the output of the CFPB. I mean it. Common sense is illegal there. One of their last nuggets, they put out a resolution. The title of it was called Small Business Lending Under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Regulation B. And the Senate said no to this resolution. We said no, can't do it, 53 to 43. And the House followed it by saying no to the CFPB, 221 to 202. I'm very proud of the Senate. Thank you, colleagues, and I'm very proud of the House. Unfortunately, President Biden has vetoed it. If I didn't know better, I would think that the president is auditioning to become the president of an Ivy League university. Because let me tell you what this resolution will do, unless we override the president's veto. Once again, you're a small businesswoman or small businessman. You need a loan. Maybe you need a loan to grow your business. Maybe you need a loan to sustain your business. You go to your community bank. You say, I need to borrow some money. You submit your financials. The bank does its job. It does accurate underwriting. But before the bank can make a decision under this new CFPB rule, where common sense is illegal, the small banker has got to turn to that applicant and say, look, I got to ask you a bunch of questions. I don't want to, but the CFPB says I have to before I can grant your loan. So please bear with me. Now, the small businesswoman or small businessman is sitting there. Things have been going pretty well. That small business person's feeling warm and toasty, thinking I'm going to get my loan and I'm going to be able to keep my business going and keep my people employed. But it sounds like to me there's a hitch here, because my banker's being very apologetic, and I can tell he's upset about this. But I'm going to try to help him and comply. So the small banker says, okay, Let's get going. I've got to ask you 81 questions. And the banker from the small bank starts with this small business person. First question, are you female? Next, are you male? Are you black? Are you white? Are you mixed race? Are you another race? Are you Hispanic? Are you a homosexual? Are you a lesbian? Are you a gay? Are you gay? Now remember, this is probably a small town in a community bank with a small businesswoman and a small businessman applying for a loan. And the CFPB, our federal government, is telling the small banker, you've got to ask these questions. The questions continue. That small banker looks the small businesswoman in the eye and says, are you bisexual? Are you transgender? Are you queer? Are you intersex? And on and on and on. Now that small businesswoman, it could be a small businessman, is going to have a couple of reactions. First, she's going to be thinking, what in God's name has happened to my country? What in God's name has happened to the federal government? And the second emotion she's probably going to feel is anger. What business is it of the CFPB? What business does the CFPB have in knowing what I do in my bedroom? It is none of its business. But the other emotion that small businesswoman's probably going to have is fear, because she needs this loan. And if she looks that small banker in the eye and says, it is none of your business whether I am gay or straight. It is none of your business what I do in the privacy of my bedroom with a consenting adult. It is none of government's business. That small businesswoman's going to be thinking, man, if I do that, he could deny my loan. It's not the fault of the small banker. It's the fault of us in Washington, D.C. It's the fault of Joe Biden, because he has vetoed this resolution. He is saying to the world, it's okay for small banks in America to be required to turn to a small businesswoman applying for a loan and say, are you lesbian? Are you gay? Are you bisexual? Are you transgender? And after they answer or don't answer, all of that information is sent to a federal agency, the CFPB, which has a data breach about every other Thursday. This is insanity. And today, in about 10 minutes, I am going to ask this body to override President Biden's veto. If you believe in fairness, if you believe in privacy, if you believe in the freedom of the American people, if you have taken your meds today, if you have any semblance of common sense left, you will see that this proposal by President Biden is like a rock, only dumber. And it is, I can't think of a better example why the American people have come to hate the federal government. And I can't think of a better example to explain to people why President Biden's poll numbers are on a journey to the center of the earth. It's stuff like this.